I am your brother in Christ, and welcome back, everybody. So, the perfectly preserved Quran is the topic for this live stream. So, without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. So, the perfectly preserved Quran, this is something that we have seen over and over, put forth by Muslims. That's one of the topics they'll say it's a miracle. It's been perfectly preserved, perfectly translated through oral tradition, is magnificently, perfectly done. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it, but let's go ahead and peel that back and actually take a look at it. So, oh boy, let's dive on into this one here. So, we look at the history of the Quran. So, we're going to go all the way back to the beginning, right after Muhammad's death. We're going to be looking at how it was being handled, how it was being transmitted. We will start off with their original assumptions. Now, we find these in the Quran. So we look at the preservation. So who preserves the Quran? We see it in Quran 15:9. Indeed, it is we, which is referring to Allah, who sent down the Quran, and indeed, we will be its guardians. Again, that's from Quran 15:9. So it is Allah who guards and protects and lays down the Quran. So let's go ahead. So that states, but who? So he's the one that protects it. He's the one that puts it forth. So, but who has the power and the authority to put it all together? Who puts their stamp on this? Who has that authority? So let's go ahead and look at that. We actually find that again in the Quran 75:17. Indeed, upon us, it is its collection and its recitation. So again, that us is again referring to Allah. So Allah has the authority to put it together and the authority to give it out and the authority to make sure that it's recited. And he's the one that protects it, according to the Quran. So, and if you believe that the Quran is 100% true, then therefore it must have been miraculously preserved. So let's look at how it was transmitted. First of all, unlike the Gospels, which were written down immediately, which were either letters or right there in the time that the people who are actually saw the events and are saying it was written down. So the Quran was orally transmitted for a long period of time before it was actually written down. Now, oral tradition, is that reliable? No, not so much. Folk stories get bigger, things get left out, things get forgotten. So no, oral tradition is very unreliable. The only thing that's really reliable is when it's written down. People can add things that they want to it or take away from it. In fact, we see this in the early accounts of Muslims that was something that was happening because people would remember it different ways, and then they would accuse each other of adding or taking away from the Quran. This even happened with my family. We had this is a side story, but it's a perfect example of why oral tradition is not reliable. Because kids exaggerate. Definitely if you're being told something over and over again as a kid, sometimes you add stuff to it. We had this big bush out in front of my parents' house. And one year there's a snowstorm and the snow and the ice collapsed the bush. So it was all horrible looking. Well, not too long ago, in fact, this is how oral traditions are so bad. Not too long ago, both my brothers told me the reason why the bush was crushed was not because of the snow, but because I fell into the bush. They grew up believing that I have fallen off of the roof into this bush. And that is because why we have that bush being destroyed like that. But that wasn't true. In fact, that never happened. I never fell off the roof and fell into a bush. I never told them that. But they added that and would have told their kids that story. Definitely if it's something that they're told to pass on. So that's one of the reasons why oral tradition can be so bad. Because you can add, misunderstand, misinterpret. Let's be honest. How many times in any conversation that you have, you misunderstand someone? There literally is a technique, and I do use it, where I'll listen to someone and then I'll restate what I think they said. And 9 times out of 10, I'm wrong. 9 times out of 10, I misunderstood what they said. And when I try to put it back into my own words, they end up correcting me. So again, oral tradition is not very reliable, and that's what we see the Quran being transmitted through. So on top of that, that protection that we read about in Quran 15 verse 9, again, doesn't seem to extend too far. We have this in the Hadith, where my wife's down in the comments section. We have reported Aisha. The verse of stoning and the verse of suckling an adult 10 times was revealed, and then they were written down on paper and kept under my pillow. When the messenger of Allah expired or died, and we were preoccupied with his death, a goat entered my tent and ate the paper. Obviously, Allah cannot protect someone against a goat. So looking back through that, so that was a verse on stoning and suckling an adult 10 times. It was revealed to Muhammad that if a woman breastfeeds a grown adult male 10 times from the breast, that means that he's no longer sexually attracted in any way, shape, or form. That doesn't take anyone to see the holes in that one. Freaking semi could drive right through it. No question about that. So on top of that, we see, again from Aisha, that chapter 3 of the Quran that currently contains 73 verses. According to Aisha, she knew that it contained over 200 at one point. It's a little bit more than a discrepancy. It's a little bit more than, oops, I wrote down the wrong word. Oops, I forgot more than half of this chapter to put in. I missed a little bit. I mean, it literally only contains a maximum of 36.5% of the original manuscript, of the original content. Think of that. Think of that if we took that and applied that to one of the Gospels. Let's do Matthew. Matthew is about middle size between all of them. As far as the number of verses goes, it has 1,071 verses. So if that was true, if we applied the same method and only 36.5% of the book of Matthew lasted, that's only 391 verses out of 1,071. That's 680 verses that we would have lost. That's unacceptable. Literally, how could you say that something is preserved miraculously? I guess you could try to claim, and this is what Muslims do. They try to claim that, well, that stuff wasn't necessarily needed. I mean, you didn't really need all those other verses, right? Those were, Allah obviously didn't want to keep them. If that's true, then why did Allah reveal them at beginning? And if this is Allah's eternal word that was with him at the very beginning of creation and was just revealed now, why are these sections not that important? Because if it lasted all the time until Allah decided, humans don't need to know that part, that's kind of a weak argument, don't you think? So even on top of that, 200 verses, over 200 verses, some of the chapters of the Quran don't even have that much to begin with. So Muhammad's companion, I'm going to butcher the name, I'm so bad at these, Al-Musa, said that 2 entire chapters were lost because Muslims were too lazy to recount them. And another entire 2 were excluded from the Quran because the Muslims didn't realize they were supposed to be added. So the question is, how many were not added to the Quran to begin with because no one thought they needed to be added? Is the Quran supposed to be like 20 times thicker? No one knows. On top of this, they were using oral transmission. They were writing some of it down just as reminders to remember what was going on. The problem with that is if someone were to die, and they were the only ones to have the memory of this verse, that's lost forever. In fact, that's what was going on. The Muslim groups were constantly at war with one another. There was constant civil war, definitely at the beginning, with the first rightly guided caliph, which, surprising, he only ruled for 2 years. That's not very long. So the first rightly guided caliph realized what was going on. That was Al-Bakr. Jeez, my brain's just not working today. He ruled from 632 to 634 AD. Like I said, 2 years, not that long. But he did decide, okay, we need to get all these manuscripts and all these notes every which where from everywhere and get it together and write the Quran. And that will be the Quran. So we're going to put it all together and keep it, definitely because they just had a huge battle and a whole bunch of people that kind of had the memory of the Quran, who had sections of the Quran memorized, died. Because very few had the entire thing memorized, if anyone, at this time, even up to today. So they were losing sections of the Quran faster than they could be counted. So he decides, you know what, we'll put it all together so that it's not lost. So he decides to do that. So he just did that. I didn't know what date he actually did that on. Couldn't find it. So within his 2 years of reigning, he did it within that time span. So that goes back, though. That goes back to the Quran and violates the Quran. So the manuscript that you currently have isn't even this one, by the way, but the first one put down was invalid by the Quran's own definition. Because again, we see who has the authority to collect the Quran. Who? Indeed, upon us is its collection and its recitation. On who? On Allah. Allah is the only one that has the authority to do this. But yet, the first caliph went and did this. So does that mean that it's invalid? Well, that didn't last very long because he put down his and then started distributing it. And people would write in it and they'd be like, oh, you forgot this part. So we'll just add this and put notes in and write notes on other things, recite it onto other paper as well. And this went on for years. And eventually it became such a problem. These discrepancies were so major and such a problem that was tearing the Muslim nations apart. It was ripping them apart. So the third rightly guided caliph, Uthman, and I can actually say that one, thank goodness. He ruled from 644 to 656. That was actually a decent span. But again, this is the third, so you had a whole caliph's reign in between, and he was fine with them following whichever Quran they happened to be following, because by this point you had a whole bunch of different copies. And how do we know they had a whole bunch of different copies with the Quran that contradicted one another? Because the third caliph got them all together and burned them after releasing his official response. So, and that means that for about 10 years, maximum, a minimum of 10 years between if the first rightly guided caliph would have made the Quran just right before he died, and then the third caliph decided, I'm going to get all these Qurans together, I'm going to burn them and produce this new Quran. You have a span of 10 years there between the two. And I'm more interested in diving into the actual history and lives of the caliphs. Definitely because the first generations there were looked upon as being the perfect example of Muslims. So I would love to go back and do a history on there. Very interesting. In fact, the third rightly guided caliph died in an assassination. So, yes, much intrigue. Much intrigue. Which always sounds so interesting. So nowadays, bring it all back. So that's the Quran that they put together. And again, according to Quran 75:17, you could very easily translate it as the Quran that we currently have today is invalid. Because unless the caliphs had the authority to do that, which according to the Quran they didn't, they shouldn't put the Quran together. And because they decided what to keep, because the two versions of the Quran were vastly different. That's why you had to even go back and even burn the original caliph's Qurans, because they were so vastly different than the one that he was trying to standardize. So, and again, since then, we have seen quite a bit of divergence. There are many different Qurans at this point as well. So even nowadays, when Muslim apologists are confronted with this, they finally, after dodging the question, after avoiding the question, they're finally coming to terms with this, that there might be small issues. In fact, they've even said that there are holes in the standard narrative. I think it's the best quote we have here. And unfortunately, I wasn't able to find his video. I was not able to find his video on here because he's removed it and no longer wants people to see it. But just imagine, if you would, we'll take his quotes. I'll go through some of his quotes as if someone was asking this of the Bible. So if someone were just asking the validity of the Bible, the historical reference of the Bible, not that all the Gospels were written down within the first lifespan of the apostles, but let's say we forgot that part. Let's say we forgot that we have the first century manuscripts that are the exact same as what we have currently. Let's forget that. Let's forget about all that. Let's say that We're just asking about the validity of the Bible, and we'll handle it like modern day Muslim apologists. That sounds like a good idea. So the question being raised in this hypothetical situation is, what does the Bible, is there any validity? Is it perfectly preserved? So the thing is, you don't want to be asking these sort of questions, because the more you study, once you start diving deeper, it gets very, very awkward. You start realizing that the standard narrative has a bunch of holes. And it's something we shouldn't discuss publicly. In fact, it shouldn't be brought out in the public at all. It should only be discussed with those who know the science around it. They're the only ones that should talk about it. It should never be brought up in public. It is something that should never be discussed in front of the masses, is if it is perfectly preserved or not. Could you imagine how pathetic that sounds? How absolutely insane that would be for a Christian apologist to say those sort of things and mean it, to actually put that forth as their defense. Well, only the learned should talk about this. It should only be talked about behind closed doors. Blows my mind that this passes as something that could not only be a good answer, but is the only answer to this question, is it should be discussed behind closed doors. The masses should not know about it. It should be hidden. So now that we brought it to today's, we have some fun topics. Might as well switch to now. So is the Quran perfectly preserved? No. No, there's too much historical evidence to say that it's corrupted beyond all understanding, beyond all comprehension within the first generation of Muslims. From a goat to people being lazy. That's what killed the Quran. Very simple. Okay, so on to some other funner topics. So David Wood, let's talk about David Wood for a little bit, just for the fun of it. So David Wood went on and decided to do some art about the Quran. So he did an origami structure, and if you've seen his video on it, I'd recommend you go check it out. He did an origami art all about a pig using the Quran, paper from the Quran. So he decided to put it up on eBay. Well, eBay didn't like that, so they took it down. So now David Wood had made a video saying that he has officially a mystery origami bag. And you can buy the mystery origami bag on eBay. And this auction is currently ongoing. So I saw this video of his yesterday. I was like, oh, cool. You know what? I got an extra $100. We can do $100. I could bet $100 on this thing. So let's go see where it's at. So it started yesterday, started going up. There were some bids going on, and I was checking it out. I was like, okay. When I got to about 48, I was like, I'll do the $100 bid. So I get on my computer, I go check it out. I go to there, and I got stupid idiot. It's been forever since I did my password, so they want me to reset it. So I reset the password. I go in there again, and I'm like, okay, I'm ready to bid $100. $100 bid. Invalid. Why is it invalid? Oh, in the time that it took me to reset the password, it might have increased slightly. A lot. Now that's 2S, I'll just call them 450. 450, buddy. Here was sitting yesterday when I decided, I'm not going to pursue it anymore. So let's go ahead and see what happened to it now. So, whoa! Okay, well, that's a little bit pricier than I have. Okay, so if you want this mystery box bag, mystery bag from the Dizzle, it is now selling at $30,100. That is a lot. That's a lot for a bag. See, there you go. Mystery bag right there. Go check it out. If you have an extra $31,000 laying around on the floor, go take a bid, I guess. I don't know. I hope whoever actually made the bid. Let's check these bids out. Oh, wow. Okay, so they've been bidding for a while, getting up to that amount. Okay, if you've got that much money, split between David Wood and me. Thank you. No, I'm kidding. That is crazy. So it's got duration on it is 7 days. It's not even been out for a full day yet. It's got 4 more hours before it's been out for a full day. And it's already at 30 grand. Holy cow. Normally you don't see a lot of the action on the Amazon bidding until the last possible second. Then you get craziness like the last hour. But that is what is going on. That's crazy. So I will have to keep my eye on that one. And as such as anything else, as we are wrapping it up, I, of course, have the obvious baby distraction and let it activate.
You're stuck.